All right. I am back with part two, I guess, of my return series. I don't know, whatever this is. Um, Basically, I'm going to try to be a little bit more prepared, more consistent. I'm kind of taking a cue from Alex Formosi. I've actually have notes, and I prepared a little bit before each of these segments, I guess. Um, and this particular one is going to be about uh, ecological jiu-jitsu, ecological dynamics. It's been a little bit over a year now, maybe a year and a half, call it, since I first heard about the term. Um, and I've actually implemented it in all the classes that I've taught over, intermittently taught over the last year, but especially so since taking up more of a consistent teaching role at 10th Planet Las Vegas. Um, so what, like Greg Souders is kind of he doesn't claim to be the originator of ecology or anything like that. He's just the guy for jiu-jitsu. And it's interesting to see how much hate he still gets. People either love him or hate him, and that's just the type of guy he is. He loves to be the bad guy, which is cool. Like that, we need bad guys to kind of push people in either direction, right? Like it's a dividing line or whatever. It's a political ideology type of thing, right? Um, and I largely agree with it. It's something that I've had a feeling about for a long time now. Basically, ever since maybe the first time I heard about this was Aliveness by Straight Blast Gym. So if you look up YouTube, Aliveness Straight Blast Gym, SBG, you'll see this really old video. The video was uploaded to YouTube 15 years ago, but who knows how old the actual video is of, I believe it's Matt Thornton, the creator of Straight Blast Gym. And he shows kind of, the definition of what is useful, or what is aliveness and why is it useful in training. And the main point behind that is jiu-jitsu is the reason why jiu-jitsu is interesting is because you have someone else who's trying to not let you do the thing that you want to do, right? It's like chess. It's somebody is moving their pieces while you're moving your pieces. And it's real time. So the fact that we got caught up in these karate katas, which is kind of drilling, the drillers camp, drillers make killers camp. And we drill on these kind of dead scenarios. If there's alive scenarios and then dead scenarios, then we kind of got hoodwinked for 15 years or so. However long jiu-jitsu has been going, we kind of fell into this, master says this is the correct technique, and this is how his master said this technique was, and this, we fell into this hero worship almost of people who know techniques and people who don't, and the people who don't have to suck up to the people who do have techniques. But it's so that's a centralized way of looking at jiu-jitsu and how knowledge passes from one from a teacher to a student, right? It's like, oh, the head instructor has all the knowledge. He knows everything. We have to listen to every single word and hang on every single word that he says. And the higher up you go, the higher belt rank you are, the more you realize, oh, these guys don't necessarily know everything, and that's fine. Like, that's the air of superiority or whatever. Like, some coaches are lean into this and others don't. Like our Coach Casey, like, defers to like other black belts in the gym. Like Rich Castro is an amazing technician, and he acts like a student for the most part. Only, like, I call upon Rich, and it's like, hey, what do we do here? Like, if we need some, like, flesh out some details on some certain things or whatever, like if he has a different perspective on what a better approach would be to something. So certain gyms have better cultures around this than others, and I'm lucky to be in one where I don't have to be as an instructor. I don't have to know all the answers, and I actively undercut anybody who tries to put that on me. And I'm like, no, like, let's figure it out. Like, it's a problem that we can solve together. So that's kind of the first point I wanted to hit on. It's top down versus bottom up. So traditional approach is the instructor, it's literally top down. The instructor is giving you step 1, step 2, step 3 of this is what you need to do in order to complete the technique and for the technique to be correct, whatever correct means. But then ecology kind of puts that on its head. It's like, no, like, figure out for yourself. You can figure out, like, yeah, there's probably better ways. There's a direction or a field of better ways, or a search space. Like, you can kind of figure out, like, where to look, and the coach can point you in the direction of where to look, and kind of nudge you towards certain things, but figure out for yourself. Like, that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. That's the fun, honestly, of jiu-jitsu. It's to not be a copy of somebody, or to be a shallow copy, like not even a full, like, my first jiu-jitsu hero was Andre Galvao, and he wrote the book Drill to Win. I was like, oh man, this is, like, you can just replicate these things, like, but that's not how it works. So that's like you idolize a certain central figurehead or figure of authority of, like, oh, he has all the answers for sure. Danaher, he's the highest level instructor. He has all the best information, and we just need to only listen to him. Listening to anybody else is a waste of time or whatever, right? But, like, Danaher has several things going for him, and I'm not going to, like, recount everything here because it's just what Greg Sauter says. So, like, he has a world-class room. He's developed that room over time. World-class athletes come seek him out. And, yeah, because he developed a handful of guys who are world beaters. And that's, like, how do you, if you're not going to be, like, they're the New York Yankees of when that, you know, back in the aughts or the 90s, like, the New York Yankees, they basically won the World Series every year, right? They're the power team. They're the New England Patriots or whatever, right? They win all the Super Bowls. They're the favorite, heavy favorite in everything that they compete in. So how do you disrupt that? How do you as I see this from a technology standpoint as well, or from a business standpoint, how do you disrupt Microsoft? How do you disrupt Apple or Google or any of these tech giants? Plenty of people start new companies trying to do that. They're startups. So in a sense, it's like startups are decentralized. It like if the centralizing force is of capital, allocate resources to the top, to FANG, Facebook, Apple, Google, Netflix, whoever, the top tech companies, then why bother? Like, because there's money to be made by starting up your own thing and trying to disrupt the kind of the incumbents, right? You're trying to make something new. You're trying to see something from a completely different angle. You improve on it by so much, or you can rapidly iterate so much more than a big, slow, kind of behemoth tech company, right? But how the pace of innovation at, say, Microsoft has only they had to acquire OpenAI to be in the AI conversation, right? So they just had a cool, I don't know what I don't know how, 100 billion or something to invest in OpenAI, and that's how they got in the game. That's how they got back into being a relevant tech company again. So I view it as business, as startups, as technology. Like that's all this. Ultimately, technology boils down to how we learn, right? This ecological dynamics is a theory of learning, and the book by Rob Gray, How We Learn to Move, like the subtitle that I fill in for myself there is like just how, like I cross out how we to move, and just it's how we learn. Everything is moving, right? My expressions are moving, my face is moving as I talk, my body is in a constant state of movement, no matter what. Like when we learn different things, like that's why teachers in school, like when you're growing up, taught you to write in notebooks, because writing, the act of writing, puts it in your brain better, right? Like we don't have a good explanation, but this is a pretty good explanation. Is this, we are manipulating our environment to, like, I'm putting pencil to paper and really manipulating the environment to store information, which is kind of a feedback to put it back into my brain to remember it later, right? So, okay, like I've done a lot of talking about ecology and whatnot, just kind of talking around it, but I guess for people who don't really understand it still, which I don't blame you, like this is it's pretty confusing for people who don't want to dive into the technical terms and all that, and that's not really necessary to enjoy the benefits. Kind of the principles of it are mostly live training. Drill as little as possible. Like from when I teach classes, I say, all right, if we do have to drill something, we're going to drill it for 6 minutes tops, and then go live with it and spend most of our time trying to apply this technique live, because trying to drill the breaking mechanics of a stray ankle lock for 30 minutes, nobody's going to get anything extra out of that. We just need to review it 1 or 2 times and then try to actually do it on somebody. That's the real test. Um, so the we want to ecological dynamics is about providing opportunities to learn. Like I was saying earlier, I don't have all the answers, and I don't believe that even if I had all the answers, I don't believe telling people all the answers right away would be helpful. It may even be counterproductive, because people don't, when people have the answers to stuff that they don't have problems for, they don't have questions, they just have answers, they don't have the questions behind, like that they have the answers, but they don't have the question to that answer, right? They don't even know they don't even know the reason why they have the answer, right? So I think that's more of where I'm coming from, or where I see it, how to easily explain it is that let's create the opportunity for learning. Let's create the environment for learning. And maybe I teach you something, but it's more my job to set the conditions for you to learn. And the conditions come in the form of like what Kit Dale calls task-based games. And Kit Dale was another early influence on me. And I thought it was so cool that he got his black belt in 4 years. And I was like, oh, wow, what? Like, and he just rolls. Like, he skipped the technique portion of class. That's unheard of, right? But he trained in such a way that he was always just working on something specific for him, and he was kind of handicapping himself to only starting in certain positions or certain situations and working things in a certain way, still with a live resisting opponent. So why does that work? Why do we need problems first in order to be open to solutions? Because pain is a great teacher. Pain is like the ultimate teacher. Like there's a reason why in our like brain structures, it's called the hippocampus. the pain and the fear center is also learning, right? Like we touch the hot stove and we're like, ow, and then we don't do it again, right? That's the classic example. So yeah, we can learn from the lessons of like the pain of others indirectly, but that's not we don't have the highest fidelity lesson from that, right? We don't learn the full lesson. We just learn like the shape of it, where we get the outline, but we don't get the full emotional brunt of what happened. We don't get the full pain of what happened. We just learn, oh, just don't do that. Just don't touch your hand on the stove. Like we didn't learn how it felt, or how much it stung, or if we got a blister afterwards or whatever. Like you don't get the same the depth of a lesson. So this is the same thing with like jiu-jitsu. Is like, yeah, you can say, okay, there are I'm going to use Rich as an example. He says there's 4 responses to half guard, and I can't remember any of them, or maybe 4 responses to let's say side control: sit up, turn in, turn away. 3 responses. I forget what the other one was, but he like Rich Castro is very like detail oriented. He's like pretty anti-eco, which is fine. Like that's how he formulates things in his mind. His like very step by step. His philosophy is, I don't want to do any guesswork. I don't want to like make up things in combat, I want to know exactly what I'm doing, which is a reasonable position to take. And he can take that because he's a black belt and he's been doing this much longer than me. So I'm not going to like criticize that or whatever. I disagree, right? But like that's still, Rich is my mentor. I respect him. He's allowed to have a different take, but I guess this is me growing up and differentiating myself. I guess maybe differentiating myself from my instructors, and saying, hey, I think I can do something different here. I can disrupt the incumbents. I can figure out this different way of teaching that's not in line with the traditional format of how class runs. Traditional format, you warm up for 5-10 minutes, and then you do the technique of the day. It's a sequence. You do a pass, then you do a pin, then you do a couple different submissions, and then you, if you're lucky, do some situational sparring around that particular move of the day. If you don't, you try to hit in rolling, but you forget because you just go and do whatever you normally do, right? No real progress is made. For a large port, for the hour that you spend on technique, you may never use that technique again. You don't even attempt it live. So for ecological jiu-jitsu or ecological dynamics or constraints-led approach, you like Cal Poly, learn by doing. That's been another major influence in my life, is you learn by doing. You go and do the thing. You don't have the full, complete Danaher breakdown. You didn't watch the Danaher instructional beforehand, but that doesn't mean you can't start to do it, right? Like just because you don't have the complete manual, like the Bible of doing stuff, doesn't mean you can't start to do it, right? So that's the idea, is that I think Greg Souders says it's knowledge of versus knowledge about. Like, you could know a lot about jiu-jitsu. You can watch all the Danaher videos. You can watch all kinds of instructionals. You can watch all the matches. But if you don't have the knowledge of the actual skill in doing the technique, the knowledge about is like useless in terms of like actual application. Like this is actually a pretty big heel turn for me, because most of my life I have been all about analysis paralysis. I have read so many articles on T Nation and bodybuilding.com and worked. I've read way more articles than I have worked out ever, right? I've read so much more on exercise than I have actually exercised. It's kind of crazy. But that's because I was in pursuit of the perfect program instead of a good enough, like, let's just do something program. I wanted to optimize. I wanted to, in computer science, we call this premature optimization. We care about things before we really need to. Like, we overcomplicate things before we actually have to take into consideration major complications, right? Major, like, network traffic. Like, say you get featured on the front page of Reddit or something, right? Then, you have to kind of figure out how to handle all that traffic. But until then, like, you can probably serve your rinky-dink blog on something free or something close to free, right? Like, you don't have to have crazy, complicated computer stuff behind it. It can be very simple until it doesn't have to be. So same thing with jiu-jitsu is like, why are we trying to tell people that they're going to have these problems before they even have these problems, that they need these answers to these problems that they haven't even encountered yet? So I think that's kind of the directionality of how we teach jiu-jitsu is inherently like wrong. Like, students need to encounter the problems themselves in order for them to want to seek out a solution. Like, if they don't know what the problem, that there is even a problem, giving them an answer isn't like they haven't encountered the problem that the answer answers yet, right? Or that solution solves that problem. So question, answer, problem, solution. Those are the pairs of things that I'm trying to keep straight. But so yeah, what I guess I don't want to like repeat myself too much here, but the way I like to teach is like, okay, we're trying to do this. We're trying to get to cross-ashi is kind of like the technique, quote unquote, technique of the week. But that is kind of an arbitrary goal. It kind of, sort of. I mean, the position's strong, but at the same time, like, we could easily go to somewhere else. But what we're going to learn through trying to get to cross-ashi is how to pummel in the legs. That's the real skill that I'm trying to get people to develop. So the end state, the end state is desirable, but the skill that we develop over in between, when we start from stray-ashi and go to cross-ashi, or attempt to get to cross-ashi, that skill that's in between there, like, that's the thing I actually want to work on. And if people have problems, we can talk about specific solutions potentially for certain people at certain times, right? So I think it's better to be problem driven than solution driven, which is kind of weird, right? One thing comes before the other. Like you can't have a solution without a problem, and you have to know what the problem is. Like, you can have a bunch of solutions to stuff, but if you don't know the corresponding problem, or if you haven't actually physically encountered the problem, if you've only heard about it and you haven't actually experienced it yourself, then yeah, you're not going to be totally wired in on, oh, do I use this solution or that solution given this problem. And these problems happen like with fully resisting opponents, because another problem with traditional drilling is that people flop. People either give too much resistance and the drilling partner can't actually do the move, or they give so little resistance that it's not even a good look to like try to drill the move, right? There's people end up on two different extremes. So let's just give them live resistance, and you start in something that looks like the thing you're trying to do, and you go live from there, and you say, okay, try to finish this arm bar or whatever, right? Here are some ideas to keep in mind, but they're not specific details, because the details will vary person to person, time to time, rep to rep. But you're always trying to isolate the shoulder and separate the hands or whatever the invariants that Greg Souders has talked about before. Those are his curriculum, and I'm not going to try to like repeat it or whatever. I wouldn't do as good of a job as he does in many YouTube videos. So yeah, pain as a teacher is kind of like we're setting ourselves up for pain, because people are going to fail in these new live environments. That's fine. That's the exciting part, is we get to fail. It's encouraged. We get to try and fail and change a little thing, try to change something in between each iteration. We get to try something else, and then we approximate better and better technique with each successive trial and error. And this is exactly how I program. Is I kind of came up with this rule for myself, but others like Alex Hormozy also says it's the rule of 100. Like, give yourself 100 iterations before you like get mad. Like it takes a long time, a lot of individual tries for you to get a thing right, or getting it close to right. So I noticed this back when I was a junior engineer. My work involves things called build pipelines, and each pipeline has builds, like individual runs of builds. So these individual runs are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to, as thousands, because these things run every day or on every code change or whatever. So when I make one of these pipelines for myself, and I'm trying to like test things out, and I'm trying to build it for the first time, I give myself 100 iterations, 100 times of clicking the play button. I was, all right, run this. Let's try this out. Let's change a line of code, and then click the run button again. Change the line of code, click the run button again. And that's the iteration cycle. So similar thing with these games is that you get to play again. You get to play over and over again. We're sitting in cross-ashi, holding our opponent down, and opponent is trying to escape. Opponents, maybe they escape one way, and then the person holding cross-ashi prevents them from escaping that way, that particular way the next time, and then they figure out a different way to escape, right? Like it's based on iterative experiences. So ultimately, I'm trying to make people better problem solvers. I don't want them to become dependent on other people for knowledge or skill or whatever. It's like that you should eventually become your own coach. You should know how to make yourself better in anything. Like as a person, as an adult in life, you should be your own coach. You should figure out how to make yourself better, or figure out who to get with in order to, like, say you don't know anything about weightlifting or whatever. Yeah, get a personal trainer. Ask them how to show you the ropes or whatever, right? Or jiu-jitsu. Like, I'm providing an environment for people to learn in. Of course, people walking in off the street, they don't know the first thing about jiu-jitsu. So yeah, they come to a jiu-jitsu gym and they learn from people who actually do the thing, right? So go and learn from the doers, and eventually you become a doer, and you become a problem solver for figuring out things that you want to do. And I don't know. It's interesting to have all this tied together for me. Like I mentioned before, Cal Poly. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for engineering. I wear a bunch of their shirts. If you're on audio, I'm holding up my shirt that I'm wearing right now. Because it's like, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. This is go through college, go through engineering school. It was so fucking hard, but it was worth it. Like that's the point, is that it's a bar that you can pass. I mean, not like literal bar, like law or whatever, but it's a thing that you do. It's a signal. It shows, hey, I can take in complex information and remember it enough, and I'm skilled enough to now be the lowest guy in the totem pole in the company I work for, which is kind of crazy, right? Like, you think, like, after graduating college, I got a master's degree too, right? Like, I was in college for 5 years, but I got a master's degree. You would expect I would know something. I did not. It's an entirely different league of competitiveness. For somebody who does programming 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, for years on end, versus a kid who just started, who is programmed for 4 years tops, like in college, in like real programming. Yeah, there's no way. There's no comparison in terms of skill level. There's zero chance that some hotshot kid is better at programming than a seasoned 10-year veteran of the industry, right? Like, yeah, they may be better at programming in terms of they launched a startup and they had to learn a bunch of different things, and they're doing their best to like wear a bunch of different hats, and they saw a gap in the market and they executed on it. Sure, they could have done that, but they're doing that from a place of 4 years of kind of, I don't know, 20 hours a week of experience, versus a 10-year veteran, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, not taking summers off type of deal, right? Like, these are two different levels. So, of course, yeah, there's wonder kids and kids who've been doing this since they can walk or whatever. But those are the exception, not the rule. So anyways, yeah, I basically covered everything that I wanted to. Overall, just, yeah, be mindful of your learning environment. You have access to the same information, your body and and your opponent's body, as the people who have discovered everything about grappling before you. It's all the same. It's just two human bodies and how they relate to each other. All the information is there. You just have to manipulate the environment to get it to where you can learn from it. Like, manipulating is learning. You interacting with the environment is learning from the environment. Another Rob Gray-ism is a perception action coupling. I think that's like an actual like technical term, and not just his term, but we perceive by acting. Like everything is movement. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards in terms of like, this book isn't just about sports. It's about everything. It's like we learn math by copying problems into our notebooks and solving them with our hand, with our pencil. Like our bodies are constantly moving. We're learning through that process. We're never just our brain thinking things and then we have to do something with that, right? Like, yeah, we're thinking, but the rest of our body is moving in some way. And I think it's all connected at some like fundamental level. So anyways, yeah, play more live games. Be really specific about how you set things up. Be very clear about winners and losers, what the win conditions are, what the losing conditions are. But also be open to variance. Be open to people solving things in different ways. As long as they get the job done, it's a good first attempt, and then you can massage it to how you want it to be more like over time. Yeah, you don't have to run into the eco lingo. That's more for like people who are actually interested in it and actually pursuing more knowledge about the thing. But yeah, you can just play it in terms of games or situational sparring with constraints, or just fancy situational sparring. Just make it most of class. Don't have people drill for an hour and then expect them to do the thing in live rolling when they're not constrained to do the thing. Yeah, so hopefully that helps with explaining the ecological approach a little bit more in plain words. I didn't say anything about affordances or attractors or attractor wells or anything like that, but you know, there's entire books about that. Anyways, talk to you guys later.